handcuffs snapped shut over silk sleeves, right in a packed Chicago restaurant. Sergeant Darren Kowalski smiled, certain he had just destroyed the prosecutor, tearing his corrupt unit apart. What he did not know was terrifying. The quiet man across the table, sipping bourbon, watching every move, was about to become his commanding officer. Assistant State's Attorney Verity Chambers had spent 14 months building a case that could end his career. Kowalski was about to learn that some dinners come with consequences no badge can protect you from. For 14 months, Verity Chambers had lived with a target on her back. At 34, she was the youngest, most relentless prosecutor in Cook County's public corruption unit. Her dark curls framed a face that judges called fearless and criminals called dangerous. Her obsession was an ironclad case against the 8th District Tactical Squad, a unit that had operated for years like a street gang with badges. They shook down informants, skimmed seized drug money, and planted weapons on unarmed suspects to justify bad shootings. At the center of it all stood Sergeant Darren Kowalski, a heavy-set, red-faced man who wore his badge like a crown. He had survived 3 internal investigations and a federal probe without a scratch. But Verity was different. She ignored the union threats. She ignored the unmarked cars parked outside her Lincoln Park condo. She had already flipped Kowalski's own bagman, a nervous young officer who handed over ledgers, dates, and burner phone records that could bury the entire squad. The grand jury was set to hear his testimony Monday morning. Kowalski was cornered, and cornered men do not surrender quietly. They strike first. He decided that Friday night, while Verity sat unaware in a candlelit restaurant, would be the night he ended her case for good, one way or another. He had been watching her for days, tracking her every move through a friendly dispatcher. He knew exactly where she would be that evening, and exactly how to make her disappear behind bars before she ever set foot in that courtroom on Monday morning. Friday night was meant to be a sanctuary. Verity sat in a dimly lit, velvet-lined booth at a restaurant called Bevetses in Chicago's River North District, nursing a glass of red wine. The room smelled of butter and cedar smoke. Soft jazz drifted from hidden speakers, mixing with the low hum of conversation from the city's elite. For one evening, she wanted to forget grand juries and burner phones and simply exist as a woman in love. Across the table sat her fiancé, Grayson Green. He was a man of quiet, towering presence, 6'3", broad-shouldered, and impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that fit him like it had been poured on. His close-cropped hair was neat, his jaw sharp, and his dark eyes carried the calm of a man who had seen chaos before and never once flinched. For 5 years, he had worked as a high-level deputy inspector for the New York Police Department's Internal Affairs Bureau, quietly dismantling organized corruption rings across Brooklyn. It was work that required patience, precision, and the kind of nerve most men never had to test. When Chicago's mayor and police superintendent finally admitted they needed an outsider to purge the rot inside the 8th District, they had quietly recruited Grayson. His appointment as the new commanding officer was a closely guarded secret, known to almost no one in the department. He had flown into the city only 3 days earlier. His official swearing-in was not scheduled until Monday morning. To the officers of the 8th District, their incoming commander was still nothing more than a name on a leaked memo, a rumor passed between shifts. "You're checking your phone again," Grayson said, his voice a low, soothing baritone. He reached across the white tablecloth and gently tapped the screen of her device. "You promised one night. No subpoenas, no burner logs." Verity sighed, offering a tired but genuine smile. I know, it's just..." Kowalski's lawyer filed a ridiculous motion to suppress the wiretaps this afternoon. "It's a desperation move, but it means they know the walls are closing in. When men like Kowalski get desperate, they get dangerous." "Let them be desperate," Grayson said, taking a slow sip of his bourbon. "You've built a bulletproof case, Verity. The FBI is behind you. The state's attorney is behind you. By next week, Kowalski won't be carrying a badge. He'll be carrying a cafeteria tray." Verity laughed, and for the first time in weeks, the tension finally left her shoulders. For the next hour, they existed outside the grim reality of Chicago's justice system. They talked about their upcoming wedding in Napa Valley, about the house they were hoping to buy in Evanston, about a future that did not involve protective details or grand jury subpoenas. Grayson reached across the table and took her hand, tracing his thumb gently over her knuckles, and for a moment the restaurant noise faded into something soft and distant. But 3 miles south, in the locker room of the 8th District Station House, Darren Kowalski was strapping on his Kevlar vest with rough, angry movements. He checked the magazine of his service pistol and slammed it home with far more force than necessary. Beside him stood Officer Jimmy O'Shea, a nervous 26-year-old who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. "You sure about this, Sarge?" O'Shea asked, his voice cracking slightly. "She's an ASA, not some corner boy. If this blows back, it's not just internal affairs we're dealing with. It's the feds." Kowalski sneered, slamming his locker shut hard enough to rattle the row of metal doors beside it. "She's a lawyer, Jimmy. Just a lawyer who thinks she can walk into our city and tell us how to police the streets. We own this town. You think the state's attorney is going to back her when she gets caught holding a felony weight of narcotics? They'll drop her like a bad habit to save their own political skin." He patted his tactical vest. Tucked inside the Velcro lining was a small, tightly wrapped plastic bag containing 2 ounces of pure cocaine, seized from a raid 3 weeks earlier and never logged into evidence. It had been waiting for exactly this moment. "We got an anonymous tip that a woman matching her description is moving weight out of a high-end restaurant in River North," Kowalski said, his smile resembling an open wound. "We're just doing our jobs, Jimmy. Investigating a tip. Proactive policing. By midnight, little Miss Chambers is going to be sitting in a holding cell crying for her union rep. And that grand jury on Monday will evaporate into nothing." O'Shea swallowed hard but said nothing more. He had learned a long time ago that arguing with Kowalski only made things worse. The 2 officers walked out into the humid Chicago night and climbed into a marked patrol cruiser. Kowalski punched the address into the dashboard GPS, though he barely needed it. He had been having Verity followed for days. He knew exactly where she was sitting, exactly which booth, exactly how many minutes it would take to walk through those heavy front doors and end her career in front of the entire city's legal establishment. The engine roared to life. Streetlights blurred past the windshield as the cruiser cut north through the city, weaving between taxis and late-night traffic. Kowalski's jaw was tight, his knuckles pale against the steering wheel. He was not thinking about consequences. He was thinking about survival, about the grand jury date circled in red on his kitchen calendar, about the 20 years he might spend in a federal prison if Verity Chambers ever stood up in that courtroom. Inside Bevetses, none of it had reached them yet. Verity was laughing at something Grayson had said, her wine glass catching the amber light of the chandelier above their booth. She had no idea that 3 miles away, a man consumed by rage and desperation was already on his way to shatter the one peaceful night she had allowed herself in months. The restaurant doors would not stay closed for much longer. The atmosphere inside Bevetses was a symphony of clinking crystal, low jazz, and hushed conversation among the city's elite. Candlelight flickered across white tablecloths, and the smell of seared beef and butter still hung warm in the air. Verity was just cutting into a filet mignon when the heavy mahogany doors of the restaurant swung open. The disruption was immediate. 2 uniformed Chicago police officers strode into the dining room, their heavy boots thudding against the hardwood floor like a warning drum, silencing every whispered conversation within seconds. Kowalski walked with an exaggerated swagger, one hand resting casually on the butt of his service weapon. The maitre stepped forward, raising a hand to stop him, but Kowalski shoved past without a word. Diners turned in their seats, conversations dying instantly as the unmistakable tension of law enforcement invading a civilian space suffocated the room. Verity looked up, her fork freezing halfway to her mouth. Her blood ran cold. She recognized the thick neck and the sneering, flushed face instantly. "What is he doing here?" she whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. Grayson did not turn around, but his eyes locked onto Verity's face, reading the sudden spike of adrenaline behind her calm expression. "Who?" "Sergeant Kowalski," she replied, keeping her voice low. Grayson's face did not change, but his posture shifted, infinitesimally, the way a coiled spring shifts before release. He set his napkin on the table and leaned back, his eyes catching the reflection of the approaching officers in the mirrored wall beside their booth. Kowalski stopped right at the edge of their table. Officer O'Shea hung back a few feet, pale and sweating profusely under the dim amber lights. "Well, well, well," Kowalski boomed, his voice deliberately loud enough to carry across the restaurant. "If it isn't Cook County's finest, Assistant State's Attorney Chambers." Verity placed her fork down with deliberate slowness. She looked up, her face a mask of absolute professional composure. "Sergeant Kowalski, are you lost? The 8th District is a long way from River North. You're out of your jurisdiction." "Crime doesn't have a jurisdiction, Counselor," Kowalski mocked, placing both hands heavily on the table and leaning in so close that Verity could smell stale coffee and wintergreen tobacco on his breath. "Matter of fact, we received an anonymous tip on the line about 10 minutes ago. Caller said a woman matching your exact description was conducting a narcotics transaction right out of this booth." Verity let out a dry, incredulous laugh. "A narcotics transaction at Bevetses? You cannot be serious, Darren. This is harassment, and it is remarkably stupid, even for you." "I take tips very seriously, Verity," Kowalski said, dropping the title entirely. He gestured toward her designer handbag sitting on the leather seat beside her. "I'm going to need you to stand up and step away from the purse. We're doing a Terry stop and a cursory search for contraband. You will do no such thing." Verity fired back, her voice sharp and unshakable. "You have no probable cause, no warrant, and an uncorroborated, conveniently timed anonymous tip does not give you the right to search my property. Step away from this table before I call the superintendent directly." "I am the probable cause," Kowalski snarled, his facade of mocking politeness vanishing entirely. He lunged forward, grabbing the strap of her purse. Verity stood up abruptly, grabbing the other end. "Let go of my property, Kowalski. This is a career-ending move." "Obstruction of justice," Kowalski yelled, glancing back at O'Shea. "Do you see this, Jimmy? The suspect is resisting." With a violent yank, he ripped the purse from Verity's grip. It spilled across the table, cosmetics, keys, and a wallet scattering over the white linen. And there, sitting perfectly in the center of the mess, was a thick, transparent bag filled with white powder. A collective gasp echoed from the neighboring tables. Someone dropped a fork. A woman near the bar covered her mouth with both hands. Verity stared at the bag, momentarily paralyzed by the sheer audacity of the frame-up. 14 months of careful, painstaking work, and it was about to be erased in front of the very legal community whose respect she had spent a career earning. "You planted that," she whispered, her voice trembling with absolute rage. "You came into a crowded restaurant and you planted that on me." "Looks like at least 2 ounces of cocaine," Kowalski said loudly, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from his tactical belt. "Possession with intent to distribute. That's a felony, Counselor. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Verity did not move. She stared into Kowalski's eyes and saw nothing but malicious triumph. He was actually doing it. He was destroying her life, her career, her reputation, right in front of half the judges and defense attorneys in Chicago. "Turn around," Kowalski barked, grabbing her shoulder and forcibly spinning her. He wrenched her wrists behind her back, cold steel biting violently into her skin. The cuffs clicked shut, the sound echoing through the dead silent restaurant. "You have the right to remain silent." Kowalski whispered directly into her ear, his breath hot against her skin. "Which is exactly what you're going to do on Monday, right? You're going to drop the case, or I make sure this hits the front page of the paper tomorrow morning." Throughout the entire chaotic exchange, Grayson Green had not moved a muscle. He had sat perfectly still, observing the angles, listening to the specific words Kowalski chose, watching the clumsy sleight of hand when the sergeant dropped the bag onto the table. He was cataloging every civil rights violation, every departmental breach, every criminal act, filing each one away with the precision of a man who had spent 5 years doing exactly this for a living. Now, With Verity handcuffed and breathing heavily beside him, Grayson calmly picked up his glass of water, took a slow sip and set it back down. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried a terrifying, resonant command that cut through the noise like a blade through silk. Kowalski turned toward him, sneering. "Stay out of this, buddy. Your girlfriend is going away for a long time. Unless you want an accessory charge, you sit there and keep your mouth shut." Grayson rose slowly to his feet. He stood 6'3", towering over Kowalski's stocky frame, and casually buttoned the center button of his suit jacket. "I ask myself a question, Sergeant," he said, his tone utterly devoid of fear or deference. "But I'll say it out loud for the record. Are you currently wearing your department-issued body camera?" Kowalski blinked, thrown off by the sudden question. "Who the hell are you? A lawyer? It doesn't matter." "The camera malfunctioned," Kowalski snapped. "Fascinating," Grayson replied dryly. He looked past the sergeant to the sweating rookie. "Officer O'Shea, is it? Is your camera also malfunctioning?" O'Shea swallowed hard. Shut up, Jimmy," Kowalski snapped. He glared at Grayson, taking a step toward him. "I don't know who you think you are, pal, but I will lock you up for interfering with a police investigation. Sit down." Grayson ignored the threat entirely. He pulled a small leather notebook from his breast pocket, uncapped a pen, and began to write, his movements unhurried, almost bored, as if the chaos unfolding around him were nothing more than routine paperwork. The restaurant, once filled with quiet elegance, had become a courtroom in miniature. Forks were set down. Wine glasses stopped halfway to lips. Every witness in the room held their breath, waiting to see what kind of man would dare stand up to Darren Kowalski in the middle of his own performance. Somewhere near the bar, a woman quietly raised her phone, angling it toward the booth, the small red light blinking to life. Kowalski did not notice. He was still staring at Grayson, trying to decide whether the calm, towering stranger in front of him was a fool, a lawyer, or something far more dangerous than either one. "Let's review the last 3 minutes, Sergeant," Grayson said, his pen still moving across the notebook page in slow, deliberate strokes, as though he had all the time in the world. Around him, the restaurant remained frozen, every eye fixed on the quiet man who had suddenly become the most dangerous person in the room. "You executed a search without a warrant, citing an anonymous tip that you fabricated. You forcibly seized a citizen's property without establishing any imminent threat. You introduced foreign narcotics into a crime scene, which, by the way, is incredibly sloppy police work. The bag is covered in your fingerprints, not hers, and right now you are holding an assistant state's attorney hostage under color of law, attempting to extort her into dropping a grand jury investigation." Kowalski's face turned an ugly shade of magenta. "I'm not going to warn you again, Slick. Put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest." "No, Darren," Grayson said softly, his eyes locking onto the corrupt officer with the cold, crushing weight of an approaching avalanche. "I am not under arrest. But I do need you to hand over your badge, your weapon, and the keys to your cruiser, right now." Kowalski let out a barking laugh, looking around the restaurant as if inviting the crowd to share in the joke. "Hand over my... Are you out of your mind? I'm a sergeant with the Chicago Police Department." Grayson reached slowly into his inner jacket pocket. Kowalski's hand instinctively dropped to his holster, a dangerous twitch of escalation that made several nearby diners flinch and duck lower in their seats. "Easy, Sergeant," Grayson warned, his voice dropping an octave, low and final. "Unless you want to add the murder of a superior officer to your federal indictment." Slowly, Grayson withdrew a gold star shield encased in black leather. He held it up, letting the restaurant lights catch the detailed engraving of the Chicago Police Department's command insignia. "My name is Captain Grayson Green," he stated, his voice ringing out with absolute authority, carrying to every corner of the silent dining room. "As of 0800 hours on Monday, I am the new commanding officer of the 8th District, but considering the circumstances, I'm starting my shift early. Uncuff my fiancé. Sergeant, before I end your life and your career right here on this floor." Staring at the gold shield, Kowalski froze. The sneer melted off his flushed face, replaced by a sudden sickening pallor. His brain, soaked in adrenaline and years of unchecked arrogance, struggled to process the small piece of metal glinting in Grayson's hand. He blinked rapidly, looking from the badge to the impeccably dressed man holding it, as though his mind refused to accept what his eyes were telling him. Somewhere behind him, he heard O'Shea's sharp intake of breath, and the sound of it landed like a physical blow. Even the maitre, still hovering near the entrance, had gone perfectly still, his hand frozen halfway to his own phone. "Captain?" Kowalski stammered, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. You're lying. The new commander doesn't transfer until Monday." "I would have been notified. The union would have been notified. Your union representative is currently at a hockey game, Darren," Grayson said, his voice a calm, even cadence that only amplified the menace beneath it. "And you weren't notified, because my primary directive from the superintendent was to audit the 8th District's tactical squad before I officially took the desk. I was brought in specifically to dismantle your operation. I simply did not expect you to hand-deliver your own resignation on my 3rd night in town." A murmur rippled through the breathless crowd of diners at Bevetses. Smartly dressed patrons were now openly holding up their phones, red recording lights blinking from the shadows of the dining room, capturing every second of Kowalski's unraveling. A well-dressed man near the bar whispered to his companion that he recognized the badge from a department press release he had seen weeks earlier, and the whisper spread from table to table like a current running through still water. Kowalski's eyes darted around the room, the reality of his trapped position finally dawning on him. He looked at the cameras, then at the bag of cocaine still resting on the white linen tablecloth, and finally at Verity, who was still handcuffed but standing remarkably tall, her eyes burning with vindication. "This is a setup," Kowalski growled, his hand hovering dangerously close to his holstered pistol, his breathing growing shallow and ragged. "You two set me up. This is entrapment." "I was acting on a tip. Officer O'Shea," Grayson barked, snapping his attention to the trembling rookie. The sheer force of the command made the young officer flinch, step away from the sergeant. O'Shea swallowed hard, looking at his superior officer, then at the towering captain, then back again. He took a hesitant step backward, his boots scraping against the hardwood floor. "Jimmy, don't you move," Kowalski snapped, panic finally bleeding into his voice. "He's a fake. He's impersonating an officer. Officer Jimmy O'Shea. Badge number 4821, Grayson said, reading the numbers off the rookie's chest without breaking eye contact with Kowalski. "If you do not step away from Sergeant Kowalski and secure his weapon right now, you will be charged as a co-conspirator in the false imprisonment of an assistant state's attorney, possession of a class felony narcotic, and extortion under color of law. You are 26 years old. Do you really want to spend the next 20 years in a federal penitentiary for a man who is currently sweating through his Kevlar because he knows he's finished?" O'Shea's hands shook. He thought about his mortgage, his young daughter, the pension he had spent 4 years building, and the training academy instructor who had once told his graduating class that the badge existed to protect people, not to bury them. He looked at Kowalski, who was practically hyperventilating now, radiating desperate malice, and the rookie made his choice. "Sarge," O'Shea whispered, his voice cracking. "Sarge, don't do it. Just take your hand off your belt, you little rat." Kowalski hissed, betrayal twisting his features into something ugly and feral. "I made you. I protected you on the street, Jimmy. Take his weapon, officer," Grayson commanded. Slowly, O'Shea unclipped his own holster, keeping his hand resting on his sidearm just in case, and stepped toward his sergeant. "Give me the gun, Darren. Please, Sarge." For a terrifying 3 seconds, the entire restaurant held its collective breath. Somewhere a glass tipped over and shattered on the floor, but no one moved to clean it up. Kowalski's fingers twitched near the grip of his pistol. He calculated the odds, running through every scenario a lifetime on the street had taught him, and finding none of them survivable. He looked at the cell phone cameras, at the terrified rookie, and at the colossal, unblinking presence of Grayson Green standing between him and any possible escape. The fight drained out of him all at once, his shoulders slumping in defeat, 20 years of borrowed authority collapsing in a single breath. Kowalski slowly raised his hands, stepping away from his duty belt. O'Shea quickly moved in, unbuckling the sergeant's weapon and taking a heavy step back, clutching it with visibly trembling hands. "Now the cuffs," Grayson said. O'Shea fumbled with his own belt, pulling out a spare set of handcuffs. He approached Kowalski and secured the sergeant's wrists behind his back. The loud, metallic ratcheting sound was the sweetest music Verity had ever heard in her life. Grayson immediately stepped around the table to Verity. He gently took her arms, retrieved the keys from O'Shea, and unlocked the steel bracelets. Verity rubbed her raw wrists, wincing slightly as the circulation returned to her fingers. "Are you okay?" Grayson asked softly, his imposing demeanor softening for just a fraction of a second, the captain briefly giving way to the man underneath. "I am now," Verity breathed, looking up at him with a fierce mixture of love and professional respect. She immediately turned her attention back to the table. "Nobody touches that bag. O'Shea, call a supervisor and an evidence technician from the Bureau of Internal Affairs. Tell them they have a pristine crime scene with untampered fingerprints belonging to your sergeant." Kowalski, now standing awkwardly with his hands cuffed behind his back, glared at Verity. "You think you won, Chambers? You think getting me off the street fixes anything? The district is bigger than me. You don't know half of what's going on." Verity stepped right up to him, close enough to see the beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. "You're right, Darren, I don't know everything. But you're going to tell me. Because when the federal prosecutor offers you 25 years instead of 40, you're going to sing like a canary." 10 minutes later, flashing blue and red lights bathed the River North Street in a chaotic glow. Investigators swarmed the restaurant, bagging the cocaine and taking statements from dozens of stunned witnesses. Kowalski was shoved into the back of an unmarked car, his head pushed down by a grim-faced internal affairs detective who showed no sympathy whatsoever. Grayson and Verity stood on the sidewalk together, the humid Chicago air feeling surprisingly crisp against their skin after the suffocating heat of the dining room. A small crowd of onlookers had gathered on the opposite curb, whispering and pointing, their phones still raised. Grayson wrapped his suit jacket around her shoulders gently, careful of her bruised, reddened wrists. "So much for one night without subpoenas," he mused, a faint smile playing on his lips as sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Drawing steadily closer, Verity leaned against him, exhaustion and relief washing over her in equal measure, her body finally allowing itself to shake. "You know, Captain, I think I'm going to like having you in my jurisdiction." Behind them, the restaurant's mahogany doors stood propped open, light spilling out onto the wet pavement, and inside, the shaken diners of Bevetses were already beginning to whisper the story that would be on every front page in the city by morning. Somewhere down the block, a lone news van was already pulling to the curb, its antenna rising slowly into the night sky, as if the city itself already sensed that something enormous had just taken place. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The 8th District Precinct House, a decaying brick fortress on the south side, buzzed with nervous energy. The weekend's events had already leaked to the press, and the morning headlines screamed in bold ink across every newsstand in the city. "Corruption Command. Tactical sergeant arrested in bizarre restaurant shakedown." At exactly 8 o'clock, Captain Grayson Green walked through the heavy glass double doors of the precinct. The low hum of holding cells and dispatch radios instantly died. Uniformed officers and plainclothes detectives stopped in their tracks, their eyes locked on the new commander. Grayson did not say a word. He walked with a measured, authoritative stride straight to the roll call room, where the morning shift already sat in a sea of blue uniforms, shifting uncomfortably in plastic chairs. He stood behind the podium and dropped a thick manila folder onto the wood, letting the silence stretch until the tension became suffocating. "My name is Captain Grayson Green," he began, his voice echoing off the cinder block walls. "By now you've all read the papers. You know what happened Friday night. I am not here to give a motivational speech. I am here to perform surgery." He tapped the folder. This precinct has operated under the delusion that a badge is a license for extortion. Sergeant Kowalski believed that delusion right up until the moment he was processed at lockup. But Kowalski was not acting alone. A nervous shuffle rippled through the back row. Grayson's eyes locked onto a figure near the door. During his interrogation yesterday, Kowalski proved incredibly cooperative. He explained exactly how an anonymous tip bypassed Central Dispatch and went straight to his cruiser's terminal. Grayson pointed directly at Lieutenant Arthur Briggs, a 20-year veteran now sweating through his collar. "Lieutenant Briggs, please stand up." Briggs rose slowly, his face turning an unhealthy shade of gray. "Captain, the man is a pathological liar trying to save his own skin." "He might be," Grayson agreed smoothly, which is why Assistant State's Attorney Chambers didn't rely on his testimony alone. She pulled the dispatch log, which required your administrative password to bypass. She also secured evidence locker footage from 3 weeks ago, showing you signing out that exact bag of narcotics under the guise of training materials. Briggs's mouth opened and closed like a fish suffocating on dry land. The officers around him leaned away, distancing themselves from a sinking ship. "Lieutenant Arthur Briggs, you are relieved of duty," Grayson commanded. "Surrender your weapon and badge to the desk sergeant. Investigators are waiting in my office." As Briggs was escorted out, utterly defeated, Grayson addressed the rest of the room. "The era of this district operating as a cartel is over. If you do your job with integrity, I will back you against anyone. If you cross the line, I will personally ensure you are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Dismissed. Downtown, Verity stood before the grand jury, presenting the final pieces of her puzzle. She no longer had only burner phone records and a nervous informant. She had a full confession from Kowalski, the arrest of Briggs, and physical proof of a frame-up that confirmed every RICO allegation she had built. "For years," she said, her voice ringing with absolute conviction, "the citizens of this city paid the salaries of a criminal enterprise disguised as a police squad. Today, we revoke that authority." By noon, the grand jury returned 17 true bills of indictment. The 8th District Tactical Squad was officially dismantled. That evening, Verity stood on the balcony of her Lincoln Park condo, watching city lights glitter against Lake Michigan. The unmarked cars that once haunted her street were finally gone. Grayson stepped out, handing her a glass of wine, his jacket and tie discarded, the captain relaxing into the man she loved. 17 indictments, he said, clinking his glass against hers. "The mayor called. The superintendent called. Half the city council is terrified of you right now." Verity smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "They should be. But I think the new commander deserves half the credit. You played Kowalski perfectly." "I just gave him enough rope," Grayson replied. He tied the knot himself. They stood in comfortable silence as the cool lake breeze drifted past. The battle was won, the corruption rooted out, the streets a little safer. "So," Grayson murmured, kissing the top of her head, "about that wedding in Napa. Think we can make it through the ceremony without someone trying to arrest us?" Verity laughed, a bright, genuine sound echoing into the Chicago night. "I don't know, Captain. But if they try, I know exactly who to call."